of Age by Paleowriter. Chapter 1.
Dear Princess Celestia.
Rarity lowered her large feather quill and stared at the paper in front of her. Was this really what it come to? She slumped her shoulders. Yes, it was. Rarity sighed her most dramatic, drawn-out sigh, even though she was alone in her shop. It was thus that her luck that Twilight, keeper of any and all books a pony could dream of, had no books on the life of history of dragons. It was just her luck that none of the doctors at Ponyville, not even the veterinarian, knew anything about the growth rate of dragons. It was thus her luck that dragons clearly had some odd method of maturing that made it impossible to figure out Spike's age relative to her. To her and her friends, of course. Rarity pushed the letter farther away from across her table. It was thus her luck that Applejack had to walk in on her and Spike's luncheon. Now, they weren't doing anything beyond sharing a plate of hay fries, but Applejack had raised an eyebrow, and Rarity had known she hadn't heard the end of it. Sure enough, later that evening, just as she finished tucking away her thread for the day, Applejack arrived at her shop. "Hi, Rarity."
Hello, Applejack.
"I don't have long, so I'm going to cut to the chase. You should really be careful, you know. What's back?"
Why, whatever do you mean?
"I mean, spend an extra time with him, treating him special. You're going to give that little guy ideas. He's so young, and you know how the kid feels about you." Rarity lifted her head high, pushing the memory to the back of her mind. While Applejack's words cut as deep as diamond, there was no use obsessing over them. She was already doing all she could to figure out just how much of a kid Spike really was. The unicorn magicked the leather back over to her and looked down at it once more.
Dear Princess Celestia, today I am writing with an inquiry rather than a report. Twilight was uncertain, so I was wondering, on the behalf of Spike, of course, if you knew the growth rates of dragons and the age at which they reach maturity.
Rarity let out a groan, dropping the letter on the table. No matter how innocently she tried to phrase it, her question still sounded like it was in very poor taste. For a second, she imagined Applejack somehow getting a hold of the leather, and her face flushed. "You know how the kid feels about you." Applejack's voice repeated in her mind. Yes, she did know how the... Rarity jabbed her quill into her inkwell harshly. Applejack just couldn't be right. Spike wasn't a kid. Not really. He was older than Sweetie Belle, at the very least. And who knows how much aging is done inside a dragon egg anyway. It's a well-known fact that different species mature at different rates, after all. Spike was obviously old enough to encompass the body of a fully grown, monstrous dragon. His birthday proved that. He couldn't have achieved that if he still truly was a baby. At least, not by the pony's standard definition of a baby. No way. The ink dripped off the quill, slowly falling back into the inkwell that Rarity hovered her pen over. She watched each drop fall, trying to use its steady rhythm to catch her breathing in check. She wasn't really having feelings for a child, was she? No, she couldn't be. Rarity jabbed the quill into the inkwell once more. Spike was... he was far more mature than the fillies and colts that ran around Ponyville. But how to prove that to the world? And some pony who knows him as well as Applejack couldn't even see it. How would any pony else? The shadows in her shop got longer and longer, until it was clear that the day had drawn to a close. Rarity lit magically several lamps, providing enough light to illuminate her immediate area and the letter in front of her. She had to finish. She had to know. Taking a deep breath, she went back to writing.
Dear Princess Celestia, today I am writing with an inquiry rather than a report. Twilight was uncertain, so I was wondering, on behalf of Spike, of course, if you knew the grave rates of dragons and the age at which they reach maturity. I will be honest in this letter, dear Princess. While I am asking for Spike's sake, I am also personally curious about all things dragon, their culture, their biology, their behavior, etc. Anything and everything you could pass on to me would be most appreciated. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Rarity.
There. That didn't sound so bad. Rarity set down her quill. Perhaps she's been worrying for nothing. Her wording was innocent enough. As long as Princess Celestia didn't do one of her annoying see right through what you're saying things, she'd be alright. Now, to send it. Spike opened up the library door to reveal a dark evening sky and a beautiful white unicorn who stood in contrast to her. "Rarity!" he exclaimed, unable to keep back a huge smile.
Hello, Spike.
Rarity replied. A slight tremor colored her voice. Spike furrowed his eyebrows, stepping aside to let her in.
I was wondering if I could ask you a favor.
Anything. Spike agreed quickly. He trailed after her as she wandered farther into the library, watching her carefully. She seems nervous, but why?
Is Twilight in?
Rarity asked, glancing around. Yeah, but she's busy star mapping up on the balcony, Spike said. I can get her if you want, but I don't think she wants to be interrupted.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Rarity levitated a rolled-up parchment out of her saddlebag.
I really just came by to see if you could send this letter to Princess Celestia for me.
A letter, of course. She's not here to visit me. Oh, I see, Spike said, trying not to sound overly dejected. As Rarity levitated the letter toward him, he noticed it wavering in the air unsteadily. It was almost as if she doesn't have her usual magic control. What's got her so worked up? Anything the matter?
Oh, no, nothing's the matter at all, Spike. Just sending in a letter. A simple letter. Short, concise. Just wanted to write to Princess, you know.
Rarity trailed off. Spike eyed her. Yeah. Something was bothering her. It could have been more obvious if she had used the word unsettled written across her forehead. But Spike said nothing else. Instead, just caught the letter out of the air when it hovered. He took a deep breath in preparation to send it, but as he did so, Rarity took a tremendous step forward. You sure you want this sent? Spike asked, looking over her way. She didn't look sure.
Of course,
Rarity replied, edging one corner of her mouth up in a forced smile.
Completely sure. Just please hurry up and do it.
Spike shrugged. If she wasn't going to tell him what was going on, he wasn't going to ask, as much as he wanted to know. He inhaled deeply and breathed his green fire at Rarity's lair, sending it the princess's way. There you go, he said, once it had fizzled away into the night. Rarity's smile relaxed once more into a genuine expression.
Thank you, Spike.
She bent down and nuzzled his cheek.
You're always so quick to help out.
His world blurred, and Spike temporarily forgot all about whatever weirdness had been going on with Rarity as he leaned into the warmth of her cheek. Rarity's smell wrapped around him, and he had to struggle to stay upright on his feet. Yeah, he managed to say. You know, it's never any problem helping you.
I know,
Rarity whispered. She pulled down back and looked down. The worry was back, Spike noted. Just barely. It was just a little crease in her eyebrows.
Spike, how? That is to say, if you were... That is... compared to...
The unicorn bit her lower lip. Her hose dancing slightly. Yes? Spike asked. Half of him wanted to help her worry go away, but the other half was wondering how he could get a picture of her with that adorable expression on. Oh, the indecisions of love.
Never mind,
Rarity said, stopping her hose from moving.
It's nothing. I'll just be going now.
She began walking back toward the door. You could stay, you know, Spike darted after her. Twilight's being boring tonight. I could use the company. I just finished baking a batch of cookies. He cut in front of her, looking up helpfully. Rarity smiled down at him.
Thank you, Spike. But I think it's for the best if I go home now. I have a big day planned tomorrow. I really need my PTC. Another time.
Spike didn't bother to hide his disappointment. Oh, all right. Another time, that's a promise. She blinked fondly at him. Spike's insides were scrunched up, gleefully flipping over themselves.
It's a promise,
Rarity said.
Have a good night, my little Spikey Wakey.
Spike stepped to one side and let her out the door. Good night, Rarity. He watched her walk away into the night and sighed to himself. How did I ever get so lucky? She could just ignore me. Especially after his face flushed a little, remembering how he pretty much spilled his feelings for her back on his birthday. Well, after that whole incident. But no, she doesn't ignore me.
She's even sweeter to me than she was before.
Spike stood at the door, watching the darkness for long after Rarity left, allowing the cool nighttime breeze to flow in around him. Aloysius hooted his annoyance at the cold from his perch behind Spike. The bird was finally awake at least. Charlie had been asking after him for over an hour now. Speaking of birds, though,
That's enough mooning over your crest for today, Spike.
the dragon told himself, heading back aside.
Pee-wee needs to be fed.
Spike headed upstairs to take care of his littlest charge, replaying his encounter with Rarity over and over in his mind, especially the cheek nuzzling part.
Why would she do that if she didn't care? At least a little.
Rarity wasn't an easy pony to understand, but Spike had allowed himself the teeniest hopes of late, the teeniest hopes that she might feel something for him in return. After all, she didn't treat any of her other friends the way she treated him. Rarity dropped a silk flower on the floor, startled as a knock on her shop door. Spike walked in a half a moment later.
Good morning, Rarity!
The dragon sounded chipper.
Good morning.
Rarity stammered, staring up to the rolled letter he carried with him. So he abandoned the hats he had been working on, and trotted over to the dragon quickly.
Has Princess Celestia written back already?
Got this morning, Spike held up the letter.
Figured it was a reply to you, so I didn't open it,
he said, relieving Rarity's biggest fear before she had even a chance to voice it. Her shoulders relaxed.
Why, thank you, Spike,
Rarity replied.
Such a difficult.
She graced him with a smile, and watched him melt a little. Then she frowned a little. Sabotek's words came back to haunt her. She chased those words to the far corners of her mind.
He's not a child. I don't care what anybody thinks. He might be a baby dragon standards, but as far as ponies go...
Rarity snatched the letter out of Spike's grasp, perhaps a bit too greedily, as the dragon stepped back in surprise.
Important then? Yes,
Rarity said. No reason to lie about that, at least. All right, Spike replied.
Then I'll let you get to reading it.
He turned to go, and a sudden panic rose up in Rarity.
Spike, wait!
She called out.
What happens if I read this, and the princess says... What if...
She swallowed hard.
Spike,
The dragon stood in her shop doorway, tilting his head at her. Rarity winced inwardly. How could she ever put into words to Spike when she couldn't even sort out herself?
I just wanted you to know that
Rarity blabbered, to cope with the utter embarrassment she was feeling. A little part of her mind envisioned her smacking her head into the wall repeatedly.
I just wanted you to know that you're a good friend to me, Spike.
She finished lamely. Oh, okay, Spike said. There was silence.
Anyhow, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day,
Rarity concluded. It might have been the most incoherent ramble she had ever given, but confound it if she didn't finish it off politely. She was a lady, after all. Steaks, Spike said.
You too.
The dragon turned and wandered out of the shop, and Rarity had to exercise her full willpower to not rush out faster. As soon as he was finally gone, Rarity flipped the sign in her shop's window from open to close, and tore the ribbon off the letter from the princess. Her eyes moved back and forth over the paper, taking in every word, and getting wider by every moment.
Why, that wasn't the point at all!
Rarity gasped, dropping the parchment.
What is this?
The paper floated down gently to her neatly swept shop floor. Rarity gaped down at the letter, steadying herself against the wall with one hoof. Staring back up at her was the following message.
Dear Rarity, thank you so much for your letter. You have impeccable timing. Few know of this, so I would thank you to keep yourself for some time being. The dragons and sea serpents are on the brink of war. Our equestrian pony emissaries have all been turned away from the conflict by one or both sides. They simply refuse to allow us to mediate. However, the sea serpents did mention they would allow one pony to step in. Just one.
Cranky Doodle is currently out on a long vacation with Matilda, so we cannot get her. We cannot get him since he has connections with a certain sea serpent.
That pony is you, Rarity. I am not sure as to why they have requested you, or what you have done to return their favor, but they seem to hold you in a high degree of esteem. I was on the fence of whether I should contact you and request your help when your letter arrived. You expressed interest in dragon culture, and society was a clear sign that I could indeed rely on you for this important mission. If you feel comfortable accepting this task, please meet with me in Canterlot tomorrow at noon. I will explain everything then. If you do not feel comfortable, please consider meeting anyway to gain a better understanding of the situation. I thank you for your time. If you would, please send me a response via Spike. And please, do not mention this to him or to anybody else. This is a matter of utmost secrecy. Sincerely, Princess Celestia.
Rarity stared at the letter on the ground.
A matter of utmost secrecy. Please send a response.
The unicorn sat back, her mind racing.
Opal dear, how do you feel about spending tomorrow at Fluttershy's?
Chapter 2. The train ride to Canterlot seemed to stretch on much longer than usual. Rarity never allowed herself to slouch in public, but it was getting hard to stay upright. She had to wake up extra early to catch the first train out so she could reach the palace by noon. Her eyelids drooped, and she could feel her shoulders threatening to go next.
Wake up, Rarity! Who knows who else is on this train right now? You aren't exactly traveling to Appaloosa.
The unicorn nonchalantly glanced about the train, wondering if there was any pony important she could recognize by sight. No pony stood out, but that didn't mean much. Rarity prided on herself on knowing a great deal about the higher end of Canterlot society, but even she couldn't pick out a face to go with every famous name. She stretched out her front legs to get her blood flowing and to wake up her tired brain. The train rounded the bend. It looked like they were finally arriving in Canterlot.
Thank Celestia,
Rarity thought, then smiled to herself. She could thank Celestia. She'd be meeting with her shortly.
I bet you find out what all this stopping a war business is about.
Rarity smiled, faltered a little. This was no social call. The train pulled to a stop, and Rarity climbed off it into the bustling Canterlot crowds. She adjusted her saddlebag, and then began her walk to the palace. Rarity! A familiar voice called, before she even managed to take 2 steps. Rarity turned, her mouth falling open.
Shining armor?
The captain of the royal guard toward her from farther down the walkway. I am so glad I found you. Princess Celestia has been waiting, and I was worried I missed you getting off the train.
Waiting? Oh no, I'm so sorry,
Rarity said.
Celestia's been waiting?
Her face paled at the thought.
I do hope I'm not late.
You aren't. Shining Armor clarified. But the train was. Do you know what's going on?
Going on?
Rarity asked. Shining Armor began to walk at a brisk pace, and Rarity had to trot to keep up. Most unladylike. But perhaps she made up for her rusty appearance by being in the company of the captain of the royal guard and the newest member of the royal family. Yeah, Shining Armor said. No pony here has any idea why the bridge over Bubble Blue River has collapsed, or why the tracks out near Green Palm Grove have been smashed up, but it's diverting all the trains through Canterlot, backing everything up.
Oh my, that does explain why our little trip took extra long this morning,
Rarity mused.
Though I can't say I had the faintest idea why there's been so much destruction in the east.
She looked away from Shining Armor, keeping her expression hidden for fear of betraying what her actual thoughts on the incidents were.
So, Celestia hasn't voiced her concerns, even to her own nephew-in-law.
Rarity filed that bit of information away, wondering just who Celestia had told about this brewing war. They continued through Canterlot, approaching the castle grounds. So, what's my sister been up to in Ponyville? I haven't heard from her in a while, Shining Armor said, changing the subject.
Twilight's been quite busy,
Rarity explained for her friend.
I'm sure she wishes she could have more time to visit and write, but Princess Celestia has given her a large assignment that takes up nearly all of her time lately. She's been a little stressed out.
And I'm sure she's completely thrilled about it. Shining Armor laughed. She's always happiest when she's got some huge deadline looming and too much work to do. Rarity laughed in return. They passed through the castle gates.
That's Twilight, all right,
she agreed. The guards gave Shining Armor a salute as he walked by. So, what's she doing for the princess? He asked next.
Some sort of scroll translation, from what I can tell. Something about ancient star alignments or some such. It all seems very tedious.
Rarity replied. Right up her alley. Shining Armor nodded.
Indeed.
In House Spike. I felt bad that we never got much of a chance to talk at the wedding, Shining Armor said. Little guy used to be my best bud around here. Always hanging around Twilight and Princess Celestia. He didn't really have much of a father figure. He trailed after me, though. The stallion chuckled to himself. Always asking questions, wanting to see what he could help out. Rarity couldn't help but smile at the mental image Shining Armor's words painted.
It's wonderful he had some pony like you to look out for him when he was young. He's doing well in Ponyville, I dare say. I don't think Twilight could do without him.
I don't doubt that, Shining Armor said. They rounded the corner, heading up the castle stairs. Does he ever get a chance to hang out with other ponies? Twilight was never very good about sharing his time after he became her assistant.
Why, yes, sometimes,
Rarity replied. They reached the castle doors. The guards magicked them open.
He frequently visits me at my shop, and visits other ponies too,
she added quickly. Good, good, Shining Armor said thoughtfully. They walked into the main hall. Princess Celestia sat at her throne on the far end, and Rarity had to admit she was a bit disappointed at the timing. She wondered if she could talk to Shining Armor some more later about Spike's early life in Canterlot. It was something she never heard much about. I'll leave you now, Shining Armor said, bowing to her and cutting off her train of thought.
Please send my best wishes to Cadence,
Rarity replied. I will!
Welcome, Rarity,
Princess Celestia called her, her voice echoing the large hall. Rarity nodded a polite goodbye to Shining Armor, then turned and walked down the garishly bright red carpet toward the princess.
I do apologize for being late, Rarity said. Thank you for your invitation, Your Highness.
She bowed low to the floor, averting her eyes from the early dyed carpet.
Please, Rarity, rise,
Princess Celestia said.
You are a guest of honor here, as always.
Rarity stood up straight, looking at the princess and feeling a pang of jealousy for her fabulously flowing mane. No matter how stressed out Princess Celestia was, her mane was always perfect.
There's no time to waste,
the princess continued, rising up off her throne to her host.
We must speak at once, in private.
She turned and walked down the stairs to the side of her throne.
And here we go,
Rarity thought, settling her shoulders.
I doubt whatever I'm about to hear will make it any easier to decline the princess's request.
Rarity followed the princess into the small back room, keeping her head held high, despite her reservations about everything going on. An ornamental wooden table sat in the center, with an old map spread out towards it. Rarity peered at it, curious. Oh my gosh, it's the war room, and there's the big board! Only you Strangelove fans will actually get that reference. Princess Celestia spun to face Rarity.
Rarity, before we speak of anything further, I must ask, what would you be willing to do to stop a war?
Her eyebrows furrowed as she looked down at Rarity to await an answer. Rarity bit her lower lip thoughtfully. It was a fairly loaded question.
Well,
Rarity began slowly.
I would, of course, do everything I could. That is to say, everything I personally could. I'm not much of a soldier, so I wouldn't be interested in using physical violence or whatnot, as I'm sure there are far better candidates than me for that sort of thing. But if a war could be won with a finely sewn evening gown, I would of course be your man, though I know that's not all you're asking of me.
Rarity paced across the room to give her nervous host something to do.
You wish for me to act as an ambassador of sorts, correct?
She looked up at the princess. Princess Celestia nodded.
There is truly no pony else better suited to the task. Then it would be most wrong of me to refuse the job,
Rarity said, going back to her pacing.
Though, if I would be gone for a considerable amount of time, I would need to close up my shop. It would make paying the bills a bit trickier, without steady income from sales and consignments. But of course, these trifles would be nothing compared to those that a war would cost. I'm certain I could convince Featherside to watch Opal during my absence. And I would need to remind my parents that I would be out, so they would not send Sleetybell over. So, you would be willing to spend time away on a journey?
Princess Celestia asked carefully.
Yes,
Rarity nodded. To that much she could agree.
What about participating in negotiations?
That part was a little trickier.
I'm not certain.
Rarity answered truthfully. She'd been thinking about it ever since she received the princess's letter.
I've never been trained in diplomacy, though I fancy myself a genteel enough pony to handle delicate situations. This situation, however, well, you understand it's manslaughter. I am honestly not sure how to approach it, but I suppose I'd be willing to try.
I would greatly appreciate it if you would try, Princess Celestia said. Her tone was grim. There hasn't been a war on this scale in centuries, if it does indeed come to pass. No pony would be prepared for the devastation. No pony would be guaranteed safety. This war must be stopped. We are talking Fallout Equestria levels of danger. Eep! Rarity blinked, unable to form a response.
No pony safe.
Images of her friends and family surfaced in her mind. Sweetie Belle, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie, Spike. Celestia walked over to the map on the table.
You see, the sea serpents have control over the world's waterways, except for the few they allowed for our use in Equestria and a handful of other nations. The dragons claim the land, save, once again, for the various other countries that have negotiated from them. The sea serpents and dragons have a truce on the grounds that are 50 yards away from the water's edge. Both species share those regions, and for nearly as far back as I can remember. But now, the dragons claim to have discovered an ancient scroll that deems the entirety of the land all the way to the water's edge as their property, and their property only. No pony has yet to see the scroll, because each of my ambassadors have been rebuffed and sent away. Likewise, we have been unable to speak to the sea serpents to see if we can aid them in their talks with the dragons. They, too, seem to see little value in our offers to help. They told us repeatedly that it's their problem to fix, and ponies should not get involved.
Princess Celestia traced out the rear end of the Bumblebee River.
But their conflict is already encroaching upon our territory. We cannot stay out of this any longer. In my last correspondence with the sea serpents, they mentioned that there was one pony to whom they would consider speaking.
Princess Celestia glanced over at Rarity.
Me,
Rarity whispered.
Precisely,
the princess said with a nod.
They said that your generosity and reasonability is legend, and that if any pony can help win their land back for them, it will be you.
Rarity stared at the map. Bumblebee River ran to the west. One of its tributaries ran into the Evergreen Forest, feeding the reservoir in Ponyville.
Why do they need the land? She asked. Do they not live in the water all the time? Sea serpents must lay their eggs on and hatch them on dry land.
Like sea turtles,
Princess Celestia explained. I am uncertain as to how or why a deal would have been struck at any time in history that would force the sea serpents to give up their access to land. It is critical to their existence.
Rarity took in a deep breath.
All right,
she said, staring at the Ponyville Reservoir on the map.
I'll go. I'll do what I can.
Princess Celestia's whole body relaxed in relief.
I was hoping you would agree. Thank you, Rarity. I shall go to Ponyville and gather my things. Perhaps I could ask some of my friends to accompany me.
Celestia shook her head.
No friends. No other ponies. No other.
Rarity stared up at the princess.
No other ponies. And I suppose asking if Spike could come as my helper is out of the question. What with the sea serpents hating the dragons right now and everything. All right, then.
She regained her composure.
Then I'll be expecting you to select some guards to escort me. Unfortunately, no.
Princess Celestia interrupted again.
I wish I could, more than anything. But the sea serpents were very clear. Only you.
Rarity's mouth fell open. Keeping like a school filly wasn't becoming of a lady like herself, but she couldn't help it.
I am truly, truly sorry.
Princess Celestia's eyes swam with apologies.
I'll be sending a small group of guards to follow you at a distance. But that's the best I can do.
Rarity nodded.
All right. You're a brave mare, Rarity.
Princess Celestia acknowledged.
Your courage will be rewarded. Now, please allow me to spend the rest of the day imparting to you as much information as I possibly can, and preparing you in the art of negotiation with these two cultures. Yes, of course, Princess,
Rarity agreed. What else could she say? The train ride back to Ponyville took just as long to ride out the day before. Rarity stumbled into her shop mid-afternoon and collapsed onto her sofa.
What have I gotten myself into?
She rolled over and stared up at the ceiling. The curtains were drawn, so there was only a faint, almost grayish light illuminating everything around her. She hadn't realized her blue curtains were result in such an awful hue when they blocked the sunlight. Rarity made a mental note to change them as soon as she got back from her trip. She sighed and rolled back on over her side. After all she had gone through yesterday, she still had no answer from the princess about the way dragons age.
You'll be seeing them plenty soon enough,
Celestia had said to Rarity, and Rarity began to think to herself, tracing one hoof along the sofa cushion.
After you walk right into the war zone and try to talk some sense into the creatures, maybe one of them will be polite enough to answer your questions.
Rarity groaned dramatically, burying her head under the sofa pillow.
Unlikely,
She sniffed.
Spike is the only dragon I've ever seen who has any sense of propriety and kindness.
She allowed herself several more minutes of sulking, but then dragged herself back to her host to stand up. There was packing to do, after all.
Oh, hi, Rarity,
Twilight said, entering the library door. Spike bolted upright from his seat at the kitchen table. He set down a series of parchment Twilight had given to him to alphabetize, hopped off from his stool, and quickly made his way into the main library.
Rarity!
He exclaimed, smiling wide.
Hi!
Rarity nodded in his direction.
Hello, Spike,
She said. She looked back and forth between him and Twilight.
I've just come by to let you know, both, that I am going to be out of town for 7 days on business.
Back to Canterlot like yesterday? Twilight asked. Rarity gone? For days? Spike's stomach sank, and he tried not to shuffle his feet too dejectedly as he walked over to Twilight's side.
No,
Rarity said.
Somewhere else. Princess Celestia has asked for my help with something, but I'm not at liberty to say what exactly.
Mysterious, Twilight replied brightly.
But at least with you gone, Spike will actually be here more, and can help me with the scroll translations the princess has entrusted to me.
The purple unicorn winked down at Spike. Spike raised an eyebrow. Scroll translations. Goody? He replied. Both ponies laughed, and Spike felt his stomach lift back up again. Making Rarity smile had to be his favorite thing in the whole world.
Anyhow, I just wanted to pass the word along, Rarity continued. Opalescence is staying with Fluttershy, and Applejack's promised to keep an eye out for Sweetie Belle when my parents need a sitter.
Anything I can do to help? Spike asked, stepping forward.
Yeah, please let us know if you need anything else taken care of,
Twilight replied.
That's very generous of you both, but I think everything is all in order,
Rarity replied.
Though, if you wouldn't mind, perhaps one of you might check in on the shop every few days, just to make sure nothing's broken into or anything like that.
Absolutely, Spike agreed quickly. I'm your guy. I'll stop by every morning and every night. Rarity looked down at him, eyes softening.
Thank you, Spike.
Spike stared back at her, swallowing his emotion. Are you going to be gone for very long? He asked.
I'm not sure,
Rarity said in return, her eyebrows knitting together ever so slightly.
It may be quite a while.
How long is a while? Spike wondered.
Honestly, it may be weeks or more,
Rarity asked to answer his unspoken question. Weeks? To his horror, Spike felt tears spring to his eyes at the news. No crying! Oh, for Celestia's sake, Spike, keep it together! Rarity's own eyes looked a little watery in turn. Spike wondered if he'd be allowed to give her a goodbye hug. If Twilight would only leave for just a moment.
Well, good luck, Rarity,
Twilight said. We're really going to miss you around here.
I hope you're able to come back soon.
Absolutely, Rarity said, smiling at Twilight.
I'll be back as soon as I can.
She looked back at Spike. There was silence for several moments. Spike continued to mentally will Twilight to leave, but she stood there just next to him. Come on, Twilight, he begged silently. Twilight clearly wasn't reading his mind like Rarity had. Rarity opened her mouth, as if to say something else, but then closed it again.
So, are you going to say goodbye, or just stand there, Spike?
Twilight teased. Spike flushed. I'm going to say goodbye! Spike insisted. That is...
Oh, Spike,
Rarity laughed lightly.
You're too much sometimes. I miss you, you know.
I'll miss you, he replied, looking up at Rarity. Good luck at your trip.
Thank you,
She said, and then, after a moment's hesitation, Rarity turned to leave.
I'll call you on your boat when I return,
she told him as she walked away. Spike's lips trembled a bit.
Okay, lover boy.
Tolly poked Spike in the side.
Don't get too crossed. She'll be back.
Spike swallowed, staring after Rarity's retreating form.
Besides, she said she'll miss you,
Twilight pointed out.
so I'm sure she'll think about you while she's gone.
Spike looked up at Twilight.
Really?
He asked. His frustration for her not giving him and Rarity a moment alone disappeared rapidly.
You really think so?
Sure, Twilight replied.
I've known Rarity for a long time now. It's obvious she cares for you a great deal and values your friendship.
Spike looked back at the library door. Rarity was gone.
She cares for me,
he repeated. Twilight tugged on his shoulder.
So instead of following its sadness, how about we go be protective? Those scrolls aren't going to translate themselves.
Spike shook his head, clearing it. Right, he said. Then followed Twilight back to the library.
What's you packing for?
Rarity jumped. She spun to the voice behind her.
Sweetie Pen! Mom and Dad say you're going away for a while,
The little filly said, trotting into Rarity's bedroom.
Where are you going? You startled me! Rarity exclaimed. Please remember to knock at the future.
At the front door! She stressed, to make it perfectly clear.
You can't just knit yourself into somebody else's home. But you're my sister.
Sleepybell cocked her head to one side.
Yes, well,
Rarity trailed off, using her magic to recollect the blanket she had dropped in the midst of folding.
all the more reason. That doesn't make any sense,
Sleepybell pointed out. Then she walked over to Rarity's dresser, and Rarity had to dash over, snatching out the mat she had been laying out next to her lantern.
So privacy, Sweetie Belle, please!
Rarity hastily shoved the map into her saddlebags, was sat on her bed half-packed.
Why are you going to the Eastern border?
Sleepybell asked. Rarity saw her sister a glare.
Who told you that?
The filly shrugged.
Your map.
Rarity groaned, tilting her head back in exasperation.
Yes! This is exactly why you need to be more respectful. My trip is none of your business, and I would appreciate it if you quit snooping!
Sleepybell blinked.
I wasn't snooping. Your map was out for every pony to see. No, it wasn't!
Rarity explained, magicking the folded blanket into her bag.
It was in my private bedroom, inside my private house! Sorry, Mary.
Rarity narrowed her eyes at her sister. She didn't sound sorry. Sleepybell trotted over to the bed next.
Can I help you pack? No, thank you,
Rarity replied. She didn't care how haughty her voice sounded. She was tired, stressed, and emotionally spent.
You should really be getting home. It's almost dark. I guess.
Sleepybell kicked one hoof along the floor. Then her ears perked up and eyes widened.
Oh! I can come back in the morning to help! No,
Rarity said firmly.
Though it wouldn't matter if she did. I'd be gone by then.
She planned on leaving under the cover of darkness, so no pony could see which way she was going. Most every pony assumed she was going back to Canterlot for business, but she didn't need any pony asking why she'd be heading south instead of north. Not to mention why she wasn't catching any train.
Just leave, please. Oh,
Sleepybell pouted.
Fine then. I just wanted to help. I know, Sweetie Belle,
Rarity sighed, magically picking up her hairbrush and comb.
But there just won't be anything for you to do for me in the morning. All right.
Sleepybell slumped her shoulders, watching Rarity pack her brush and comb in the side pouch saddlebags.
I'll be going then. Hope you have a safe trip.
She dragged her home's foes to the door, and it suddenly dawned on Rarity this would be the last she would see of her sister for some time.
A war where no pony would be safe.
The princess's words echoed in her mind.
Sweetie Belle, wait!
Rarity called, trotting after her. Her sister turned, and Rarity pulled her in for a hug.
Be good while I'm away, all right? Don't give Mom and Dad too much trouble.
Sweetie Belle hugged.
Don't worry about me, Mary. I'm a big filly. You'll see. I'm going to prove to you just how mature and helpful I can be. Ow, that was my hoof!
Spike sat up in bed, awakened by the voices inside.
Are you absolutely sure she went that way? Absolutely.
Keymarker Sayers pony trackers! Shh! This didn't sound good. It was 1 in the morning. What were those three doing up? Much less wandering outside the library at this hour.
Twilight?
Spike called. His adopted sister was fast asleep in her bed, was zonked out after another night of scroll translation. He poked her a little.
Twilight? I'm going to check on something outside, okay?
What? Twilight asked, blinking a little.
Spike? I'm going to check on something outside, okay?
Spike repeated.
I thought I heard voices.
Twilight's eyes were already closed again.
That's nice, Spike. Let me know if Mars has set yet.
Sure! Spike rolled his eyes a little. He pulled Twilight's blanket up over her more, tucking in the sides. There wasn't any time to waste beyond that. The fillies' voices were getting farther and farther away. Spike jogged down the stairs and out the front door into the dark. Which way? A gaggle of giggles answered his question. He ran in its direction as fast as his little feet could carry him. For a while, he was worried he lost them, but then after what seemed like an eternity of running, another burst of giggles sounded, followed by an annoyed complaint.
Will you two cut it out?
Sleepybell complained. Sleepybell. He knew that voice. Spike dashed along the direction of the sounds, nearing the edge of Ponyville.
You're going to give us away!
Sleepybell insisted.
So, where do you think your sister's going? No idea. I knew she wasn't leaving in the morning. Rarity would never pack up her hairbrush a full night before starting a trip. Plus, her later was out on the table on that map. But why would she go into the evergreen forest all alone at night?
The evergreen forest? Spike's eyes flew open.
Rarity, no! Not at night. Yeah, I thought Rainbow Dash was brave enough for that thing. That's what I want to find out.
Sleepybell explained, her voice growing fainter. Spike had to jog faster to keep up with them. How the three fillies were moving so quickly, he had no idea. All he knew was that he had to catch up, and then... Spike grimaced, racing past Fireside's cottage into the edges of the wild forest after the little ponies.
I need to bring them home, but that leaves Rarity all alone in the evergreen forest.
He ran faster. I'll figure it out once I caught up with them.
Whoa!
Scootaloo yelled from ahead, somewhere amidst the darker trees.
Hey! Let us go!
Spike gasped. A huge winged creature rose up in the air over the tree line. From its claws, it dangled Scootaloo's scooter and wagon, with all three fillies hanging on desperately.
Help!
Spike's heart stopped in his chest at the sound of screams.
No!
But the creature was already flying away, deep into the forest, with Scootaloo, Apple Bloom, and Sleepybell in tow.